Here we are for another round of the 70s versus the 90s, and it's redemption in Little League Baseball when I put Michael Ritchie's The Bad News Bears against Brian Robbins's Hardball. And this one was a real fun one to get through. I mean, both of these movies are very similar in like story, but they're definitely a lot different in tone. So that's mainly what we're going to look at today. And so first up, we have Michael Ritchie's The Bad News Bears, starring the great Walter Matthau. I mean, Walter Matthau was one of the greatest actors of all time. Dude could do comedy, drama, and that fine line between comedy and drama that this film definitely has a mixture of. I mean, he plays an alcoholic pool cleaner who's like, gruff to say the least. This one rich businessman guy decides to he wants all of his kids to play, or his kid in particular, along with a bunch of the other kids that don't get to participate in the fucking Little League Baseball shit. And so he pays Walter Matthau's character to basically be the manager of this baseball team that's, a bunch of misfits, all the kids that couldn't make the cut and shit. And so, and of course, Walter Matthau's definitely a misfit himself, a third-rate baseball player who never made it himself, and now he's just a drunken pool cleaner. And at first, he doesn't take it seriously. He doesn't give a fuck. He's in it for the money. And after that first game that they have that is just an absolute fucking blowout, like 26-0, little boys get their asses absolutely handed to them, and he sees the disappointment in their eyes and just their broken spirits, and something inside of him wants to do better with them, so he really gets going on, and he even gets in contact with a young girl played by Tatum O'Neal whose mom he used to bang, and he also taught her to play baseball and stuff, and she's got a hell of a curveball and fastball, all that good shit. And he convinces her to do it. She's reluctant at first, but the thing about it is, when you want a woman to do something, just tell her that she can't do it, and they automatically will fucking do it and shit. And there's also a very young Jackie Earle Haley who kind of plays the bad boy in the movie, and of course he turns out to be an exceptional athlete, so they kind of seduce him into playing ball, and then with these people on their team, and they also try gets the other players to not only be better at playing baseball, but being better at working with each other, working as a team and stuff. And of course, the biggest competition they have is the team led by Vic Morrow, who was exceptional at playing a fucking prick. And he is one of the biggest pricks that he ever played in a film. In this one, we see, especially when he slaps his own son during the championship game, because of course the Bad News Bears, they keep getting better and better, and they end up playing that team which is the Yankees, and they end up playing each other in that. They end up losing, but that was the best thing about the 70s. You didn't always have to win in the 70s. It was just as long as you showed the fucking establishment that it were better than them, and they definitely did that, because that whole they're cordial at the winning team is cordial at the end, and then you can take that trophy and shove it up your ass and stuff. And of course, there's a lot of coarse language. You see a lot of shit that probably wouldn't fly today in movies, but honestly, who really gives a fuck? When you look at it, the 70s movies were a lot fucking better than the shit they're putting out now. So that probably should tell you something. Maybe shit shouldn't be so fucking sensitive. I'm not getting on that train of thought. You can eviscerate me in the comments for that one, but I'll debate you all day on that one, because it's just because you say fucked up shit doesn't mean you're a fucked up person. It just means that you're not as educated. That was the whole point of shit in the 70s, because they were dealing with political correctness just as much as anybody is today, but they just still had a don't give a fuck mentality, and it's kind of what you need. And that's what makes the Bad News Bears so great. Of course, Walter Matthau too, he's funny in it, and there are moments, especially the moments between him and Tatum O'Neal, which of course Tatum O'Neal was great at dealing with fucking ain't shit dudes, of course, most specifically when she starred alongside her father, Ryan O'Neal, in Paper Moon. And this is a nice little follow-up to that, about 3 years after, I believe, that great film. It should be the youngest person to win an Academy Award too. But Bad News Bears is also brilliant too, because you just really see these kids coming together, and kind of a guy redeeming himself from being a fucking asshole and stuff. Especially those scenes between him and Tatum O'Neal where he's, so I'm a bum, and she's like, no, you're not, and all this stuff. And it's brilliantly done to where like you see both of them crying, but they don't cry in front of each other. It's really great shit. Because of course Michael Ritchie was one of the great journeyman directors. The thing about journeyman directors is they could do it all. Whatever movie was thrown at them, whether it be comedy, drama, musicals, horror films, action, whatever the fuck they needed to do, they just made whatever film. A whole lot different from like an auteur, so to speak. Whereas like you could tell like, oh, this is like an Ingmar Bergman movie, or this is a Martin Scorsese film, or this is a Paul Thomas Anderson film. You couldn't really tell like, oh, if it was a Michael Ritchie film, or if it was an Arthur Hiller film, or a Peter Hyams film. With like those three directors specifically, if you saw their name under directed by, you knew it was going to be a good fucking movie, more often than not. And especially Michael Ritchie, he did at least 3 Walter Matthau films. This might have been the first one. He also did The Survivors and The Couch Trip, which are all good movies. And then we move forward to Brian Robbins' Hardball, starring Keanu Reeves in a similar role that Walter Matthau plays. But now he's a gambling junkie, and he's in with the bookies, like fucking way more money than he can fucking pay for, and he's like this close to getting his ass beat to death, and now he gets a fucking job offer from a dude he's trying to get money from, and pay him $500 a week to coach this little league team that he only does just to have like a little charity write-off thing. And so now he's stuck doing this because he has no other choice. And that's in like the south side of Chicago, and he's teaching a bunch of inner city kids to play baseball and stuff. And first he doesn't give a fuck either, but the thing about it is Keanu Reeves is not quite the actor that Walter Matthau is. He does his best to immerse himself in the drama, but there's no he doesn't really know comedy outside of like Bill and Ted, and it's not most of it. Even when he's doing drama too, it kind of comes out a bit forced, and it's like there's not as much drama between him and the kids either. It's more or less, they kind of come from different worlds. There's that usual culture clash and shit, and it's not. He's not understanding of like the environment they come from, and he kind of learns all the shit. And of course, they throw a little romance in there. They got Diane Lane's fine ass playing the fucking school teacher who actually gives a fuck. And, through her also, he learns to give a fuck. So the kids and the hot teacher help him like give a fuck. And of course, John Hawkes plays his friend. John Hawkes might be the best one in the movie and shit, but it's one of those things where like the movie has more drama than it has fun. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but at times this film feels like a fucking like a PSA after school special, and of course like the character development in Hardball is not near as good as the character development in The Bad News Bears, because it's like the kids end up winning at the end in Hardball, even after G-Baby, very young kid that really wasn't old enough to play in the team, he ends up shot and dies, and they kind of play it in his honor, and then they win those trophies up and shit. You don't even actually see the game. It's like, whereas the Bad News Bears, you see that final championship game, and it's a hell of a fucking game, So it's one of those things. Let's tack on a happy ending to make up for all the sad shit that happened in the movie and stuff. It's weak, and it's just piss poor filmmaking. Also, the soundtrack, is a little like forced. It's kind of like, let's just put on all these fucking popular hip hop songs of the time and add the soundtrack. And a couple of times they work, but I feel like there could have been more music that's organic to what's going on in the film and stuff, as opposed to like Jerry Fielding's fucking score arrangement to fucking Carmen's music, but I gotta give it to the Bad News Bears. One, like I said, Walter Matthau is a way better actor than Keanu Reeves. Like, Keanu Reeves is a lot better when he's shooting motherfuckers. He's not good at, like, conveying drama. He's got kind of a flat plastic face, whereas, like, Walter Matthau had such an expressive face, and just like when you feel like that moment that he has in the dugout with Tatum O'Neal, that's one of the most like heartbreaking sequences in the film. And it doesn't feel forced, and it doesn't feel like, you know, he's even trying to act. It's so naturalistic. He is this character, and he's playing it, you know, fucking brilliantly. You know, we see him, you know, from passing out drunk on the baseball field to like really being a real manager and shit. So like I said, that's another thing. The character development is a lot better because like, you know, Keanu Reeves in Hardball, he's a fucking gambling junkie bum, you know, but all of a sudden now, you know, these, you know, inner city kids that like tugged at his heartstrings, and this hot teacher that he's like forcing him to give a fuck. Now all of a sudden he's volunteering to teach in schools, and you know, all this other shit. He's gonna keep the team going. Fucking lame as hell. Like I said, it's an after school special. And like the thing about it is, with this little self-indulgent series that I have going on here, it's more about what is the better movie. What movie do I personally want to sit down and watch again? It's the fucking Bad News Bears. You know, and one, the kids are a lot funnier too in the Bad News Bears. You know, you also get more of a diverse group and shit, you know, and it's, of course, that Bad News Bears takes place somewhere in California, because, you know, that was the thing too. Whatever movies were getting made, it was a lot easier to make in your home fucking town than anything else, you know. But so for anybody keeping score, that is 81 to 64. 70s are up by 17. You know, the 90s were getting them for a little while, but the 70s are back on track, making that lead grow even more. You know? So I mean, like I said, I personally am gunning for the 70s, but we still got a long way to go. I got a lot of these. Hell, I've been doing this shit for a little over a year now. Could be doing it for another 5. Who the fuck knows? As long as these matchups keep coming, I'll keep doing them, because I got to know. You know, the bigger the volume of it, the more academic. People can't say I'm biased. I just cut it off because the 70s are up by 17, you know. I gotta keep going with it, because I gotta fucking know which decade is really better than the other one and stuff. And it's like, with movies like The Bad News Bears, you know, you really got a sense of real ass people. Like Hardball is just, you know, shit, let's just try to tug at the heartstrings and make people feel something, as opposed to actually watch a really great movie. So if I've said anything wrong, anything you disagree with, feel free to eviscerate me in the comments. This is just one asshole's opinion, you know. Like I said, I'm on a self-indulgent journey to see which decade is better, the 70s or the 90s. And it looks like the 70s are hitting it out of the motherfucking park.